Hello and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for Blue Skies Over Donetsk. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the co-directors of Blue Skies Over Donetsk, Eli Brooks Davidson and Jeffrey Michael Weeks. Hello to the both of you and welcome.
How you doing? Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Well, but both of you joining us from Springfield, Missouri, and I must let our audience know that you're both firefighters and you're both on duty right now. So a call could come in and we might have to end this short, but let's keep our fingers crossed so we can have a good conversation.
Let's see, hopefully.
uh, Firefighters, do all firefighters make films? I mean, what's going on here? I mean, come on, tell me about this. How did this come about?
No, we are certainly the anomaly, at least in our area. Not many of the guys we work with are into cinema, other than big movies anyway. So I would say Eli and I both kept our passion for filmmaking kind of a secret until we met each other and felt each other out on like, all right, is this a safe place to talk about films? And well, obviously we were at the same fire station at that point in time, and we were able to really bond over the style and different movies we liked and scores we appreciated. So yeah, it was just it felt like fate, I guess.
I see. But as firefighters, you're used to facing danger. So when you're ever out on a call and you're resolving, do you ever wish that you had a camera? I wish I could film this. This is so exciting and so forth. Does that ever happen at all?
Certainly, that's
Yeah, for sure.
I've actually snuck my phone to places I probably shouldn't have taken my phone to just snap a quick picture.
Yeah.
Interesting. So to go to Ukraine, whose idea was it? Was it yours, Eli? Was it Jeffrey's?
I mean, you can kind of tell the story. I think we kind of came. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
I definitely had the passion to go tell this story, and had a connection through the church I attend of a missionary that was in Ukraine, and I really wanted to go share his story and document it because he had kind of changed from this pastor position to like a mule for supplies and resources, just trying to help people in any way he could. And I expressed like the interest to Eli that I really wanted to go to Ukraine and do this, and he was extremely supportive and interested. But that door closed for me, and that wasn't an option for me to go with it. But I soon discovered Eli, has a whole history with Ukraine.
Yeah. So I'd been to Ukraine, I think at that time, 5 times prior to that, all prior to the war. Both of my sisters were adopted from Ukraine. I had a brother who lived there for 4 years. Again, I had traveled there myself, independent of film, independent of just of the war effort, right, if you will. But I hadn't been back in some time. It had probably been, man, 5 to 7 years maybe since I'd been back. Certainly I'd been back since the war broke out. And so when the doors closed for Jeff, and he kind of had sort of resolved like, I felt this passion, but really all the doors have shut. There's really no way of me getting in the country. I was like, well, I've got some friends over. Let me see who I could talk to and see if we could maybe reopen some of those doors if we just took it from maybe a different angle. And so so basically it was one of those things. It was like, man, I would go if you would go. And he's like, kind of sitting there going, well, I'd go if you'd go. And then it was like kind of like this like tennis back and forth, and both saying like, I would go. Like, and so then I was like, well, let me call my friends. Let me see what's available. So I ended up calling friends I hadn't spoke to in years and said, how hard would it be for 2 Americans to get into Ukraine? And they're like, well, aerospace is closed, so you can't fly in. But if you were to take a train to the eastern border of Poland and take a bus or train across to CIFF, it could be very possible. In fact, we're very, very receptive to Westerners. So every single thing that every opportunity I gave for there to be an excuse for us, there was none. They were saying, well, you could do this to bypass this hurdle. You could do this to circumnavigate that. And so by the end of it, it was kind of like, well, this is actually incredibly doable for 2 Americans. And so at that point, it was just getting our wives on board. And so I come back to Jeff, I tell Jeff, I say, hey man, we believe it's this daunting, impossible task, but it was actually incredibly doable. These are the steps we need to take. It won't be easy, but we can make it happen. And he said, okay, I'm going to talk to my wife. I was like, I need to talk to mine. I haven't even spoke to her yet. Like at this point we were conspiring, like we need to go talk to our spouses about this. And so meanwhile, Jeff's wife's pregnant at the time. He goes and speaks with his wife, and I'm taking my wife out to dinner. And I remember I was sitting there, but about a week had elapsed, and I'm going, man, it stinks because I can't possibly expect him and his wife to want to do this, but I all of a sudden now have equal passion and desire to do this. And I really feel likewise a calling to go over there and shoot this film. And I kid you not, call it divine, call it luck, destiny, whatever. As I was saying that to my wife, I get a call. We're sitting down in dinner. I take the call, and he says, hey man, I'm in. And so I'm like, so it felt divine. It felt like that was the final door, had got blown off its hinges. And from then on, we had 1 month, T-minus 1 month, maybe and a half before we were going to be in country. Mm-hmm. So that was the plan.
Well, that's great that you have supporting spouses. I take it that the two of you are still married. Is that?
Yes. And actually my wife actually, we soon learned, was pregnant during that trip as well. And so we always say, like, I did that to like make sure that we both had equal stake. Like he had 2 kids, one on the way. I had 2 kids. And then once my wife was pregnant as well for the trip, it was like, okay, so we both are putting both at equal stake. But no, both of our wives, kids, and really family beyond that has been incredibly supportive.
Right. The firefighters we work with have been amazingly, they're our biggest fans, and so supportive of everything we're doing. Everyone asks about the project and wants to know and ask about Ukraine and
is donated to it. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's great that, to have the support of so many of people. It just gives you the inspiration to do more. Like you said, Eli, it was almost like divine in a way. It was like meant to be. Doors kept opening and you couldn't say no. And that's great that friends and family supported you. So did you have any idea what you were facing when you went over? Did you, when you actually went into Kiev, and did you know what to expect at all, or were you just open-minded to just filming this family?
Yeah, for me, I had this expectation that the city was in ruins and we'd be sleeping on the ground and like it would be dirty and gross and like just kind of like tucked in and very World War II type of battleground. And I remember being just blown away on the bus we took from Poland into Ukraine that eventually led to Kyiv, that like it was a bus full of women that were dressed, just like we would, with like Lululemon and Coach bags and iPhones and AirPods and fake nails. And I was like, these are beautiful women that like are not in ruins at all. And it turned out that was mainly, these are women that are refugees that are traveling back to see their husbands or boyfriends and stuff that are on leave from the military. But even getting into Kyiv, like, there's coffee shops that are open, there's restaurants. We went to the square and we saw so many things, and it wasn't business as usual, but I was blown away that like, we're not in this third world country that's been blown up. We're in a city the size of Chicago, that's nice, that has Teslas driving around and modern everything, just like any American big city. But there are craters from where bombs have hit. So yeah, that kind of, my perspective totally changed on what I was going into, just based on that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I would say for me, it was more like in context to my prior visits, it was just, I had an expectation of Ukraine, of what it was pre-war, and then coming back, there certainly was this sort of cloud of depression over me most of the trip. It was a very heavy trip for me, and it really is each time, but that time especially because the country, while still had a lot of its modern conveniences, there was this just heavy air over the entire country that I'd loved. There was just this heaviness, this dismal sort of unspoken suffering that you could feel just by walking down the street, that you can only really experience it with a country that's deeply at war. And I think that was what was hard, to see this country in this, at really the lowest state that I had ever seen it before. That was where expectation, reality did not meet expectation for me, was coming back to a dramatically different place.
So when you finally connected with the family, did you have a plan on how to film them, or you talked to them first? Tell us a little bit about how you went about capturing their lives.
Yeah, and that's a great question, because it's funny, the Kabolski family was not initially who we were going to be filming. As many of you guys already know, right? Documentary filmmaking is reactive, right? Like, it's like we had went into with this mindset that we could sort of pre-plan or sort of create a skeleton script of what the film who we might follow, who our subjects would be, what might be the general story structure. But in reality, you can sort of plan your way into narrative, and you don't want to do that, right? This isn't narrative film, and it shouldn't be treated as such. And so you can sort of plan your way out of the medium, and then it becomes reality TV, and it becomes dishonest in a way. And so what had happened was we'd had this idea of the characters we might be following, and we were kind of using Andrei Kabolski and his as our translator and our transport throughout the country. And we were at his family's home that night, and they were playing games in the front room and pouring tea and building a fire in the front living room, because there was no power, right? There's these consistent power outages throughout the region in the dead of winter. And as we were sitting there in the dark playing games by firelight, it was like in that moment that we realized, like, this is the story. Like, this is like, we're planning who we might find, but like, what the subject that's before us is right here. He's sitting right here with us. And so we filmed that night, got some pretty compelling footage, which actually ended up making the final cut. But we realized, like, we could still film these peripheral characters, right? And record the devastation, but use Andrei as sort of the common thread of the storyline, the constant of the storyline. And so the story just naturally took this turn where he was like, well, my son's got soccer practice tomorrow. And I've got to go deliver these stoves in the Far East where they're, without power. I could probably rearrange that and move that around for you guys. And we're like, well, you know what? No, just live life as you would. Like, whatever needs to be done, we'll just join you. Like, we'll go tandem and just act natural, completely do as you would be doing. And so in the end, the story ended up writing itself. And that's so often how documentaries work. It's like, he took his son to soccer practice, and then he went off to the Far East and was away for a couple of days delivering stoves. And then literally he makes it back in time for his son's soccer game. And that's something that you can't write. That's a beautiful story that only writes itself. And so, I guess it's a cautionary tale of, like, you can plan too much in documentary work and end up, missing the beautiful thing that's right in front of you.
That's great. I thank you for that recap too, just to how things came about. Did you face any danger at all while you were there?
Yeah. So when in Kyiv, even rewinding, once we crossed into Ukraine, I was very much like, oh man, like, the weight of, we are in this country that's at war. Like, missiles should be raining down on us any second. It was kind of the unrealistic fear I had. And then as we move closer and closer to Kyiv, you're like, man, this is a city that's been bombed just over and over. They're launching missiles at it all the time. And, you really, like, I have an uneasiness. And, we stayed the night there, and then we started moving to the east. And then, we're getting closer and closer to the front line. And, like, that fear is just rising and rising and rising for me. All the way to the people's house we stayed the night in the Far East was just a few kilometers off of the front line. So you could kind of hear rounds going off all night. And then as we moved even closer to try and deliver deliver these stoves, like, I mean, it sounds like they're shooting off mortars in the field right next to us. And so yeah, we heard all kinds of stuff, all kinds of explosions, all kinds of tank fire. And then as we worked our way away from the front line, we actually had a mortar that was aimed at us. And so as we were driving away in our van, we're next to a minefield, and it has signs all over to don't play in the minefield, I guess. And I see this explosion just out our window, and it's probably, I don't know, 50 yards away, and it felt close. But my thought was, the way I rationalized it was like a bird just had a bad day and landed on a mine, went down for a worm or something, and boom. And in reality, they started all speaking Ukrainian in our van and getting very excited and
throwing back Kevlar, throwing back flax.
Yeah, throwing all this stuff. And we're coming up to a checkpoint, and another mortar round hits, in line with the road now, and about, I would say, 30 yards behind us. And the whole back end of the van does this back and forth motion, and the driver is now, Andre's driving real fast. And he's coming to this checkpoint, and I'm like, well, we got to slow down for the checkpoint. Like, this is a Ukrainian checkpoint. And the guard comes out, and he just starts waving his hand, and Andre's got his window half down, and they're yelling at each other, and Andre just takes off again. And Eli and I are kind of like, we feel like children, literally, because we have no clue what's going on. We're just riding in the van. We're with all these people that are trying to make decisions, and we don't get to weigh in on the decisions. We're just participants. And eventually, a few minutes down the road, Andre takes the time to explain to us that those mortars were being aimed at us. The checkpoint guards were encouraging us to take off as fast as we can, because they knew the Russian was targeting our van. They had tracked it and could see that we were delivering aid.
And the odd part, is something to take note and shine light on, is we were part of a sort of a humanitarian convoy. So we were attached to a group, following a group called Mercy Projects, who had a Red Cross on the side of their van. All the vans were filled in this sort of convoy with clothes and warm clothes and stoves, these little potbelly stoves that work as cooking and heating stoves that you can just put these units in your house. And so they were stored to the gills in each one of these like vans in the convoy. And so it's not like they viewed it. It was there's no way this was like ambiguous at all. Like they were targeting humanitarian convoys. This was not, we did not appear like militants. It was very clear. The vehicles were labeled, the vehicles were civilian, and yet they still continued to aim for us. And so that's just something worth taking note of,
right?
That there was a Red Cross on the side of at least one of our lead vehicles. So,
well, I'm glad that you made it safely through that experience. But in hindsight, when you go through something like that, sometimes you kind of like chuckle it off in a nervous way. Did you ever say to yourself, I should have pulled out the camera? Did you think about that at all afterwards?
I started with this camera rig that was, built out. And by the time I got done, I had the smallest thing I could hold. And it was because of that. Like, I kept missing these experiences because I had to, fire up a battery and kickstart this. And it was like, man, by the time I get everything out and running, like, I missed the action, if you will. For this experience, there was really nothing to record other than everyone kind of talking and going frantic in the van.
It already happened.
Yeah.
It was, but that being said, and not to we don't want to romanticize, the war aspect of it, the combat of it all. That is a very dark reality for some every day. But, in our new film coming out that we're currently working on, the second installment, there is a scene that we do completely catch impact. Like we were filming as artillery rounds were going over our head and landing behind us, and it's a super visceral experience. You feel it all, you hear it all, you see most of it. And so we were able to capture, because we had two cameras rolling. We were a lot more streamlined, a lot more mobile this time. The camera setups were smaller. And so we were able to capture actually a lot more of that this second film, probably about as far as we think we responsibly should go.
Maybe a little past that.
Yeah, probably a little past that with, having families and all. But that being said, I think certainly we adapted our tactics for the second
Right.
film.
Yeah,
Is that fair to say?
we learned our lesson.
Yeah.
So this second film, this is like a continuation of the first film, or is this different?
No, yeah, so the idea is we ended up sort of fundraising for Blue Skies Over Donetsk because we anticipated a lot more costs in the post. But what ended up happening is we ended up had a close friend who donated a lot of the composition, and it's beautiful. If you've watched the film, beautiful composition by a wonderful composer. But he donated practically at a rate that's a donation in reality, and so that cost us significantly less. Jeff and I undertook the editing and the sound mixing. We spent probably 5 times longer than what the professional might spend, but it was ours and it was so we were able to sort of mold it ourselves exactly how we wanted. And so that was, the editing. Everyone knows that, people out there making independent films, that's a huge percentage of the cost of the post-production costs. And so, but when you just go down the list and in every way, we were able to cut back on the cost, but we still had sort of this fundraised money. So we sort of contacted Andre and said, hey, look, we've got this surplus from last year's budget. We could come, what we could do is we could just send it to you. We could send it to you or Mercy Projects. We could send it to your ministry, send it to your nonprofit, and you can use it as best way what seems fit. That'd be helpful to you. Or we could use that money to buy 2 more tickets and come back and produce another film, a second installment, and continue, awareness on the state side. And we gave him that option. He was like, oh, information is so much more valuable. I'd rather you come here and film some more. And so he felt like our dollar went a little bit farther in that capacity. So we bought 2 more tickets and made a second film. We're currently in the post-production for it. But that's kind of how that kind of came about, which it wasn't originally intended to be a 2-part installment. It was again, doors opening that allowed the second project to come underway.
And the second film, is it about the same family, a different family, or?
Yeah, it's very I'm super excited about it because the small children that are that are Andre's children, Lucian and Lilea, are so small that as they've grown a year, you can tell that so much more than Andre aging a year. You see these children age a year, and to be able to, the idea of being able to capture them, as they're growing up through this conflict, you see them grow, you still see them still be children, but you also are starting to see a little bit of a hardened spirit to them,
Yeah.
And so, not that that's the best thing ever, but we feel like it's a really unique way to document this history.
Yeah, exactly. And the hope is, we're not to get too much into what the future holds, but we have a vision for the future, returning, and this idea of measuring the impact of this war, how war shapes a generation. And we have a unique opportunity because we were there first year of the conflict. We were able to, document Andre and his young children and his wife. And now we're able to return, and we're able to, the kids are a little bit older. Andre's a little more weathered. We're able to film some more and then hopefully go back, whether the war's over or not, right? The idea is there's still going to be a reconstructive period. And the idea is coming back again this upcoming year. Mm-hmm. And so being able to look at a conflict through the eyes of the children that have lived it and the father who's trying to child rear at the same time, creating a normalcy for his children while at the same time, contributing to his country and trying to be a good countryman, if you will, right? It's like, I think we, in some ways, just happened upon it, but have been able to, document the war, I think, in a very unique way. And we're just fortunate to have been there, right place at the right time, at the end of the day.
No, this is just fascinating. It's the story is still being written, and I'm glad that the 2 of you are, doing that and have the support to do it. I'm sure a lot of people admire your bravery and your tenacity too, and they wish they could do it, but they're not you, and you're, living the dreams of people that can't do it. So this is great, and continue best to the both of you with this project. Yes,
thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Thanks.
Yeah, I thank you both for joining us today, and wish you all the best, and especially to your family as well too, who are really couldn't do this without your family, your
Absolutely.
your family and your firefighter family and your extended family, to your community, and they should you have a lot to be proud of. So congratulations and all the best.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank you
giving
so
us a
much.
platform, and that's the name of the game in film, the platform. So we appreciate you guys taking time.
You're quite welcome. And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about our upcoming events, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.